Good morning from Sugar City Studios, beautiful Johnson Square, sunny Savannah, Georgia. Mark Hall, North Point of View with Dr. Walter Kimses.
Hey, morning, Mark.
Walter, how you doing?
Great, and you?
Yeah, I'm doing great. Hey, and thanks to Daniel for being here, man, setting us up, getting us straight in here. Hey, what the heck is going on in our economy? I'm seeing this stuff where these boats are, stacked up at LA for the first time ever, Savannah. My wife can't get her crepe pans. Lindsay can't get her sofa in less than 6 months. What the heck's going on, man?
Yeah, well, let's just start from the beginning. When the pandemic hit, and remember, nobody was prepared for this. Maybe China a little bit because they noticed some bad things were happening.
Right.
But nobody was prepared for this. And you might remember almost a little over a year ago, in March of 2020, we were told to socially distance, to work from home, to wear masks or not wear masks. That came a little bit later. And the economy screeched to a halt.
Right.
So sales dropped a lot because the stores were closed. And inventories actually increased a little bit.
That was a year ago, right? Right.
That was a year ago, exactly.
Dead on a year ago.
Right. And then about in April or so, we started to reopen the economy or announced that we were going to reopen it. And but in April at the same time, people who were stuck at home got a little bored, and we saw a lot of shopping. And when you break down the stuff they were shopping, some of it was more household goods, for example, toilet paper, because if you're not going to the office, if you're not traveling, if you're not going to school, and you're going to be home more, then the odds are that you're going to have to use more of that in your own house as opposed to someplace outside of your house. And the economy wasn't set up to produce enough home toilet paper. It was the cheap, office and hotel type toilet paper.
And you got a good friend when they'll go out shopping for you, right?
Absolutely. I do remember a year ago you scored some quality toilet paper for me. All I had was that office
funny
stuff. Anyways, so we try to turn the economy back on. We had also ignored another trend that was boiling in the background, and that was new home builds and new used home sales.
Right.
They both picked up a lot.
Right.
We spent the previous period, 2009 to 2019, running on average below 1.4 million new home builds annually. And what happened is in 2019, in December, for the first time, we saw new home starts exceed 1.4 million. They went to 1.6 million. That's the annual rate for the month of December. So what that says is over 10 years, there's a lot of pent up demand. If you're going to average out to 1.4 million, and I think we will, then if you spend too much time below that rate, then you're going to spend a lot of time above that rate. And so after the pandemic hit, the new home starts stopped for a little bit, and then they picked up with vengeance, shot back up to 1.5 and then 1.6 million. So
we're in a crush right now, residential in this market.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So we've seen we see new home builds starting. We see used home sales really picking up. At the same time, a lot of people were.
By the way, inventory level is at the lowest in 40 years. Just read that in the journal this morning.
Yeah, that's correct. And I was showing you some charts earlier.
Yeah.
The data that I have for the retailers goes back to 1992, and it is the lowest ever. More importantly, the inventory to sales ratio has dropped to 1.2.
That's back on the retail side now, right? So
Yes.
We're talking about the Lindsay sofa, right?
Exactly.
Okay.
So so basically, what's happened is the sales have shot way above trend. Retailers' sales have never been this high. At the same time, they haven't been able to get inventory. Trying to bring stuff from abroad into the U.S. too much at the same time as everybody congested and fighting for capacity
Right.
at the main ports. On one hand, if you're trying to produce, it's hard because the workers, the factories are having trouble attracting workers because they're afraid of getting coronavirus.
Right.
And they're getting paid a lot of money to stay home with those unemployment benefits, etc. So if you can't produce at the old rate, you can see this happening. In fact, the other place where you see this are the commodity prices.
Right.
Lumber. We were talking the other day with our friends at Evans about steel prices.
Yeah.
So that's basically the crux of it. The big question is how long.
Yeah. How does this play out over the next 12 to 24 months?
So what I think is going to happen is as we see people, as we achieve herd immunity, the guys who are vaccinated, they're going to take off with it. Disney World, they're going to go on
Yep.
cruises and eat out every night, movie theaters, anything but from home.
Right.
And so they won't be so bored to continue to buy things they don't really need. So I think the spending shifts back from goods to
services.
Exactly.
Yeah, experience, travel, all of that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We've all learned you only live once. So, go have some fun.
Do you see a leveling out then on the inventory over the next 12 to 24 months? Obviously, a pretty big shift. I'm just going to say that the sofa purchases and all that are going to get put on the back burner now to the trips, right?
I agree with you completely.
Yeah. What does that do to GDP?
It won't have a negative effect because the drop in service spending was much bigger than the increase in goods spending. GDP still isn't back to its 2019 level. I mean, we had that horrible 30-some% drop in the Q2 last year,
Right.
then a 30-some% increase, almost the same number. But the problem is
That was the K curve, right?
exactly
Kempsey's curve.
exactly. So fourth quarter we had about 4% GDP growth. So when you add it all up, we are still behind. But by the end of this year, we'll be back above 2020's level, or back to the 2019 level or higher.
Right.
But the composition of it will be different. Consumer spending was 70% services, 30% goods in 2019. It dropped to 67% services, 33% goods, and that'll just shift back. But as that share shifts back, it's a lot more money put into the economy in the form of services. All those restaurant workers will be back to work. The factory workers will be back to work.
Right.
And then we can catch up on the inventories, which right now, as you said, they are at all-time lows.
Right. Does that have a moderating effect then on these? This is probably another talk, but I'm just thinking about inflation. Inflation sort of the conversation right now and what it looks like in a year. You want to touch on that quickly?
Well, just only to point out that, all of the cost push drivers of inflation are up. Oil prices are higher.
Right.
Steel prices, lumber prices, copper, aluminum. You make the list. Even the agricultural products, their prices are higher. Transportation costs are higher, but we can talk about that later. But across the board, all of the cost indicators are pushing up, and the government's out there issuing more debt. So I think we are headed towards higher inflation. And in fact, the Fed said until we average 2% inflation, they're going to just keep their foot off the brakes. And we haven't seen 2% inflation in probably 6-7 years.
Right.
We've been running 1% to 2%.
Sounds like a segue into our next talk. Walter, thanks.
Right.
Appreciate
Great.
your time, man. Good
Thanks,
to see you.
Mark. Take care.
All right.